On this day in history, we remember the remarkable individuals who shaped our world. Welcome to Who Died Today in History, where we honor their legacies. From artists to leaders, their impact lives on. If you find their stories meaningful, like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay connected.
Thank you to all our amazing channel members for your generous support.
Joan Bennett Kennedy, the former wife of U.S. Senator Ted Kennedy and a figure linked to America's storied Camelot era, died on October 8, 2025, at the age of 89 from natural causes. Her passing closes a chapter on a life deeply entwined with the highs and tragedies of 20th century American public life. Throughout her years, Joan weathered a unique constellation of personal and public pressure. As a young bride, she stepped into the Kennedy family during a period of idealism and national optimism. Yet she also bore the weight of multiple tragedies: the assassinations of her brothers-in-law John F. Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy, her husband's infamous Chappaquiddick scandal, her own battles with alcoholism, and the difficulties of maintaining identity beyond the shadow of a powerful political dynasty. Her death arrived at a moment when much of the original Kennedy generation has already passed. It triggered reflection across media and political circles, with tributes emphasizing her resilience, grace, and complexity. Though she never held political office, her life had symbolic import. She represented both the idealism and the human cost behind the Kennedy myth. Her passing, in effect, reinforced her place in public memory, not as a footnote in her husband's narrative, but as a person who endured and evolved through decades of scrutiny. In death, her legend becomes part of how we interpret the mid-century political family myth. Her story reminds us that power and memory are never just about the prominent names, but about the interwoven lives around them. She offered lessons in survival, dignity, and the fragility of public persona. That Joan's life is now complete allows us to ask broader questions. How do we reckon with mortality when someone's identity has been consumed by public narrative? How do we balance admiration with recognition of suffering? In commemorating her through obituaries, historical accounts, and the testimonies of those who knew her, we attempt to preserve not just a name, but the complexity of a human being who lived under intense pressure. Memory is as much about preserving contradictions as it is about celebrating achievement, especially for those who exist within the glare of power and expectation. Joan Hackett, an acclaimed American actress known for her intelligence, emotional depth, and independence, died on October 8, 1983, at the age of 49 after a courageous battle with ovarian cancer. Her death, though from natural causes, reflected both the medical challenges of her time and the quiet resilience of a woman who embodied the shifting values of Hollywood during the 1960s and 1970s, a period when actresses increasingly fought for substantive roles and personal autonomy. Born in New York City in 1934, Hackett began her career on television before earning recognition on Broadway and in film. She gained acclaim for her roles in Support Your Local Sheriff, 1969, and Only When I Laugh, 1981, the latter earning her an Academy Award nomination. Hackett was known for her uncompromising approach to her craft, often portraying women who were intelligent, vulnerable, and fiercely self-aware, characters who reflected a growing societal demand for authenticity and equality. When she was diagnosed with cancer in the late 1970s, Hackett continued to work despite her deteriorating health. Her final performances, marked by subtlety and strength, carried a quiet poignancy as she confronted her illness privately. Her death in Los Angeles in 1983 came at a time when cancer awareness and treatment options were still developing, highlighting the broader struggles of women in an era when discussions about illness, mortality, and autonomy were often silenced. The immediate response to Hackett's passing was one of deep respect from peers and critics who admired her integrity and depth. She was remembered not for sensational headlines, but for her artistry and humanity. Her gravestone famously bears the inscription, "Go away, I'm sleeping," a testament to her wit and individuality, qualities that defined both her life and her legacy. Hackett's death amplified her reputation as an artist of rare sensitivity, unafraid to challenge convention. It underscored a moment in Hollywood's evolution when female performers were beginning to redefine both their craft and their personal identities. In remembering Joan Hackett, we are reminded of the delicate interplay between mortality and meaning. Her legacy endures through the films and performances that captured her essence, proof that while life is finite, art offers a form of immortality that continues to speak to new generations with honesty and grace. Burt Young, the rugged and soulful character actor best known for portraying Paulie in the Rocky film series, passed away on October 8, 2023, at the age of 83. His death was attributed to natural causes, marking the quiet end of a long life spent embodying the working-class struggles and emotional honesty that defined much of 20th century American cinema. In many ways, his passing reflected the fading of a generation of actors who brought authenticity, grit, and emotional vulnerability to the screen. Qualities that stood in stark contrast to the polished celebrity culture of later decades. Born Gerald Tommaso DeLuise in Queens, New York in 1940, Young lived many lives before becoming a celebrated actor. A U.S. Marine, boxer, and painter, he brought his real-life toughness and compassion to every role he played. When he entered the film industry in the 1970s, American cinema was undergoing a cultural transformation. Films like Rocky, 1976, Chinatown, 1974, and Once Upon a Time in America, 1984, all of which featured Young, reflected a national appetite for stories rooted in realism, struggle, and redemption. Young's portrayal of Paulie in Rocky resonated deeply with audiences because it captured both the flaws and loyalty of ordinary people navigating hard times. His character became symbolic of working-class America, tough on the outside, tender on the inside, and deeply human. His later life, spent largely out of the spotlight, demonstrated the humility and groundedness that made him beloved among peers and fans alike. The news of his death was met with widespread mourning from the entertainment industry and audiences worldwide. His Rocky co-stars and admirers paid tribute not only to his performances, but to the sincerity he brought to every role. The loss of Burt Young signified more than the death of an actor. It represented the passing of an era when emotional authenticity outweighed spectacle in film. Young's legacy endures through his art, both cinematic and visual. His paintings, often introspective and raw, reveal the same emotional honesty that made his screen performances timeless. In remembering Burt Young, we see how art allows humanity to confront mortality with grace, how through storytelling, performance, and memory, figures like him become immortalized as reflections of our shared resilience, imperfection, and enduring spirit. Eileen Hurley, the distinguished Scottish actress whose career spanned stage, film, and television, passed away on October 8, 2008, at the age of 90 in New York City, due to complications from pneumonia. Her death marked the end of a long and remarkable career that bridged the elegance of classic theater with the emotional intimacy of modern television drama. In many ways, Hurley's passing symbolized the twilight of a generation of performers who mastered both Shakespearean grandeur and the evolving demands of American daytime television. Born in Glasgow in 1918, Hurley began her career in the theater, earning acclaim for her commanding performances in productions of Hamlet and Macbeth. Her poise and depth earned her the role of Queen Gertrude in Laurence Olivier's Hamlet, where her nuanced portrayal captured the conflict between maternal love and moral weakness. She later reprised this role opposite Richard Burton and Nicol Williamson, cementing her as one of the definitive Gertrudes of the 20th century. However, it was her work on the American soap opera All My Children that made her a household name. From 1976 until her death, Hurley portrayed Myrtle Fargate, a charmingly eccentric and wise matriarch beloved by viewers. The longevity of her television career reflected the shifting entertainment values of her era, from classical theater's reverence for the written word to television's embrace of serialized, emotional storytelling. Hurley brought a level of theatrical sophistication to daytime television, helping to elevate the medium during its cultural peak. The immediate reaction to her death was one of deep affection from both colleagues and fans. The cast and crew of All My Children paid tribute on air, dedicating episodes to her memory, a fitting gesture for a performer who had spent more than 3 decades shaping the show's heart. Her passing also sparked reflection on how soap operas, often dismissed as melodramatic, had quietly served as modern morality plays for millions of viewers. Eileen Hurley's death reminds us how art allows humanity to confront mortality with grace and continuity. Through her work, she bridged centuries of performance tradition, proving that storytelling, whether on a Shakespearean stage or in a televised living room, remains one of humanity's most powerful ways of defying time. In remembering her, we celebrate not only a career but an enduring truth that great artists never truly leave us. They live on in the emotions they awaken. Phyllis Calvert, one of Britain's most beloved actresses of the mid-20th century, passed away on October 8, 2002, at the age of 87. Her death from natural causes marked the quiet close of a career that had defined an era of grace, resilience, and understated strength in British cinema. Calvert's passing, like her performances, reflected the values of her time: dignity, perseverance, and emotional intelligence. In an age shaped by war, recovery, and social change. Born in London in 1915, Calvert rose to prominence during World War II, a period when cinema served as both escapism and moral reinforcement. Her portrayals in films such as Fanny by Gaslight, 1944, and Madonna of the Seven Moons, 1945, established her as the quintessential English heroine, composed yet passionate, refined yet resilient. These roles resonated deeply with wartime audiences seeking strength and hope amid uncertainty. In many ways, her screen persona embodied the virtues that Britain sought to uphold during its most challenging years. Her death in 2002 came at a time when the golden age of British cinema had long passed. Yet her influence continued to echo through generations of performers who admired her subtlety and grace. The immediate response to her passing was one of quiet reverence. While modern audiences may have known her best for her later television appearances in The Winslow Boy and The Duchess of Duke Street, film historians and critics recognized her as a vital link in the lineage of British screen acting, a performer who balanced classical poise with psychological realism. Calvert's death also underscored how fame itself had evolved. In contrast to the modern obsession with celebrity culture, her era valued restraint and craftsmanship over spectacle. Her graceful exit from the public eye in later life symbolized a bygone ideal of artistry, rooted in humility rather than self-promotion. In reflecting on Calvert's life and death, we are reminded that the way society remembers its artists reveals much about its values. Through retrospectives, restored films, and biographical tributes, her legacy endures, not as a relic of nostalgia, but as a timeless example of integrity in art. Phyllis Calvert's passing invites us to consider how cinema immortalizes not only beauty and talent, but also the quiet moral strength that shapes the collective spirit of an age. Al Davis, the iconic owner and general manager of the Oakland Raiders, passed away on October 8, 2011, at the age of 82. His death from heart failure marked the end of one of the most fiercely independent and influential figures in American sports history. Davis's passing was more than the loss of a team executive. It represented the close of an era defined by defiance, innovation, and an unrelenting pursuit of excellence that shaped the identity of the National Football League itself. Born in 1929 in Brockton, Massachusetts, Davis built his reputation as a maverick visionary. As the Raiders' leader for nearly 5 decades, he transformed the team from a struggling franchise into a powerhouse synonymous with toughness and rebellion. His famous motto, "Just win, baby," captured the aggressive spirit of not just his team, but also the cultural shift of the 1960s and 1970s, a time when challenging authority and breaking convention became part of the American ethos. When Davis died, the reaction was immediate and emotional across the sports world. Players, coaches, and fans alike recognized his profound influence on both the game and its business. He was instrumental in promoting diversity within the NFL, hiring the first African-American head coach of the modern era, Art Shell, and the first female CEO, Amy Trask. His passing prompted reflection on how deeply he had reshaped football, not only through his team's identity, but through his unyielding fight for independence, most famously seen in his legal battles with the NFL and his decision to move the Raiders between cities despite opposition. In death, Davis's legend only grew. His rebellious image became mythic, embodying both the triumphs and contradictions of American ambition. The commitment to excellence he championed continued as a guiding ethos for players and fans long after he was gone. Al Davis's passing reveals much about humanity's fascination with power and legacy. He lived and died by his own code, and in doing so, became a symbol of perseverance and individuality. Through documentaries, memorial tributes, and the enduring mystique of the Raiders' silver and black, Davis remains immortalized as the embodiment of football's rebellious heart, a reminder that even in death, the will to defy and inspire can echo far beyond the final whistle. Willy Brandt, one of Germany's most influential post-war statesmen and a symbol of reconciliation in a divided Europe, passed away on October 8, 1992, at the age of 78. His death from colon cancer marked the end of a political life defined by moral conviction, humility, and an unyielding pursuit of peace in the shadow of the Cold War. Brandt's passing was not merely the death of a politician, it was the loss of a conscience for modern Germany. Born Herbert Fromm in 1913, Brandt adopted his pseudonym while resisting the Nazi regime. His life was shaped by exile, resistance, and a profound understanding of the consequences of tyranny. As Chancellor of West Germany from 1969 to 1974, he championed Ostpolitik, a groundbreaking policy of outreach toward Eastern Europe and the Soviet bloc. His gesture of kneeling at the Warsaw Ghetto Memorial in 1970 became one of the 20th century's most powerful images of repentance and reconciliation. When Brandt died, Germany had only recently been reunified. His vision of bridging divides had, in a sense, been fulfilled. Yet his death came during a period of uncertainty, when the newly unified nation was struggling to define its identity. His passing evoked a wave of national mourning and reflection, particularly because his ideals of peace, tolerance, and moral responsibility were viewed as essential to Germany's democratic rebirth. In the days that followed, tributes poured in from around the world. Leaders, citizens, and historians alike recognized that Brandt's death symbolized the fading of an era when political courage and empathy had guided international relations. Brandt's legend only deepened after his passing. His name remains synonymous with moral integrity in politics, a contrast to the cynicism that often dominates public life. Streets, schools, and foundations bearing his name ensure that his ideals remain part of Germany's cultural memory. In the broader human story, Brandt's death underscores our enduring struggle to reconcile power with compassion. We immortalize figures like him through monuments, documentaries, and the retelling of their defining acts, not merely to honor their memory, but to remind ourselves that humility and courage can coexist in leadership. Willy Brandt's life and death continue to challenge humanity to confront its past with honesty and to pursue peace with conviction. Fernando Lamas, the Argentine-born actor and director whose suave demeanor epitomized Hollywood's golden age charm, died on October 8, 1982, at the age of 67. His death from pancreatic cancer marked the end of a career that bridged Latin American passion and American sophistication, reflecting the mid-20th century's fascination with cultural glamour and international allure. Lamas's passing was not violent or sudden. It was a quiet farewell from a man who had once captivated audiences with his confidence, wit, and elegance. Born in Buenos Aires in 1915, Lamas became a major film star in Argentina before moving to Hollywood in the late 1940s. There, he found fame in romantic and adventure films such as The Merry Widow, 1952, and Dangerous When Wet, 1953, often cast as the exotic Latin lover. His persona mirrored Hollywood's post-war obsession with cosmopolitan sophistication, a time when charm and charisma were as valuable as talent. Yet, behind the polished image was a man deeply devoted to his craft, one who eventually transitioned into directing television, including episodes of Falcon Crest and The Bold Ones. By the time of his death, Lamas represented a bygone era in Hollywood. The 1980s had ushered in new cinematic sensibilities, gritty realism and moral complexity that contrasted sharply with his refined, romantic style. His death thus symbolized more than the loss of a performer. It marked the fading of an age when movie stars embodied ideals of grace and poise rather than raw authenticity. The immediate reaction to Lamas's passing was one of nostalgia. Colleagues and admirers recalled his professionalism, charm, and wit, while his son, actor Lorenzo Lamas, carried forward his father's legacy into a new generation of television fame. In this sense, Fernando Lamas's death did not extinguish his legend. It transformed it. His persona lived on in affectionate parody, most memorably through Billy Crystal's recurring Saturday Night Live character, Fernando, a loving tribute that immortalized his suave, self-assured mannerisms with the famous phrase, "You look marvelous." Lamas's death reminds us of humanity's enduring fascination with beauty, style, and the fleeting nature of fame. Through mimicry, homage, and cultural memory, figures like Lamas are never truly forgotten. They become symbols, reflections of the ideals and dreams of their time, preserved not just in film reels, but in the collective imagination that refuses to let elegance fade into history. Franklin Pierce, the 14th President of the United States, died on October 8, 1869, in Concord, New Hampshire, from cirrhosis of the liver at the age of 64. His death from complications related to chronic alcoholism was both tragic and telling, a quiet, solitary end to one of America's most embattled presidencies. Pierce's decline reflected the deep divisions and disillusionment of the mid-19th century, an era when the moral and political struggles over slavery fractured the nation and left even its leaders broken by the weight of history. Pierce's life had been marked by both personal tragedy and political failure. Before entering the White House, he suffered the devastating loss of all three of his children, his last son dying in a horrific train accident just weeks before his inauguration. The grief left both Pierce and his wife, Jane, emotionally shattered, and his growing dependence on alcohol worsened during his presidency. Politically, Pierce's tenure is often remembered for the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which repealed the Missouri Compromise and allowed new territories to decide the issue of slavery by popular sovereignty. Though intended as a measure of democratic compromise, the act instead deepened sectional tensions and set the stage for the Civil War. By the time of his death, Pierce was a forgotten figure, living in relative isolation. The nation he once led had endured civil war, the abolition of slavery, and the turbulent presidency of Andrew Johnson. Few mourned his passing. Newspapers at the time reported his death briefly, with little ceremony or political reflection. Yet, in hindsight, Pierce's death, and the quiet obscurity into which he faded, embodies the uneasy relationship between leadership and legacy. His fall from grace illustrates how public figures can be shaped and sometimes undone by the moral crises of their age. Today, Pierce's memory persists as a cautionary tale about the perils of indecision in moments of national upheaval. While his portrait still hangs among America's presidents, his legacy is more lesson than celebration, a reminder that leadership demands not only intellect and diplomacy, but moral courage. In death, as in life, Franklin Pierce forces us to confront how history judges those who fail to rise to their era's defining challenges, and how the memory of flawed leaders lingers as both warning and reflection of humanity's struggle with power, loss, and redemption.